Good morning, Olivia.
Hey, good morning. Who is this? Is this Barbie?
It is. How are you?
I'm good, Barbie. Hi.
How's your dad?
He's okay. Thank you for asking. He's doing a lot better.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear it. I was worried about you guys.
Yeah,
Hi guys.
it was quite a shock. He's in really good health normally. I mean, he's older. He's going to be 81, so it shouldn't be a total shock. But up till now, he's been in such good health. It was kind of surprising. So.
Okay. Well, good to hear. Hey, Greg.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Good, good. So we got Donna, Justin, Dee Dee, Megan in the office. So thank you, Olivia.
Cool.
Appreciate you doing this. Barbie, Alec, how you guys doing today?
Good.
Good. Good. Love to hear.
Busy.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah. Never a dull moment.
That's it, right? I mean, if the busier you are, the better. It keeps days going by quick, keeps everything flowing well, right?
Mhm.
Good. Good. So Olivia, yeah, if you want to take off and then kind of just give you a little overview after Olivia, Dee and I are just going to go over I'll do a quick little thing on Chime, just kind of keep everybody up to date and just kind of see how we can better utilize that. That'll be quick. And then Dee and I have some stuff to go over as well regarding what are we going over? Some listing agreement stuff, right? Or extension addendums, stuff of that nature. So we'll let Olivia take it away, and then once she's done, we'll keep rolling for a little bit, and then get everybody squared away.
Cool. All right. I just did this like similar presentation about 2 weeks ago, but I must be getting old because I don't even remember what I talked about. I was like, oh yeah, I just did this, and now I'm like, oh. So if I'm looking down, I apologize in advance, just because I'm going through some notes. But I think it's a good topic for you guys, for me to cover, and it's title related, but the goal of what I'm going over, I'm not trying to make anyone title agents. It's just that I'm trying to identify things that we see on our side with a higher volume of contracts than you guys will probably get in a month, unless you're closing 30 to 45 deals, which is awesome if you are. But where we can see where the biggest time gets allocated for things that are getting missed at certain points in the process. Greg, is everyone there? Have I met everyone? Who's in the office?
Yeah, I was just muting actually because I was talking to Donna. Donna's one of our new agents. I've known Donna for a long time, so she's here in office. And I just kind of was telling her who you and Shano are. So got her up to date on that, but you have not met her. You know Justin, right? Justin, you guys have met, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Justin Gork is here, and of course Megan. So Donna would be the only one.
Cool. Okay. Donna, I'm just so you know, I'm sure Greg has talked briefly, but I'm a real estate attorney. I'm also the owner of Producer's Title, and certified to do RON closing. So it's lovely to meet you. And for everyone else, yeah, who knows me, again, I don't want, the takeaway is not so that you guys know a ton about title, which unless you're looking to transfer into the title industry, there's no point in you knowing the ins and outs of title and a lot of what I'm covering today. The point is to identify it, put the people who need to be in touch with one another, maybe gather some documents from your clients, and then move on. I don't want you to have to keep getting in the middle of things, which is sometimes I see a lot of good agents do. The intention, I think, is a good thing, like you're trying to help your client. But if you don't quite know exactly what you're doing, it can become a little bit murky. And I'm going to kind of go into that. And it's also stuff, I'm going to get into touch on probate. I'm not a probate attorney. I am an attorney, but I don't do probate work. So I don't I don't really get involved except to the extent that I need to, which is kind of my goal. And what I see with a lot of the more seasoned agents that we work with is they know how to just put the parties in touch with one another and move on and not get so ingrained, wasting a bunch of time for stuff that you guys really don't need to deal with. And that kind of ties into the title of this presentation, which is a roadmap to successful closings, which is kind of how we can get you to closing more seamlessly and also to ultimately save you time so that when you have that extra time, you can utilize it to find new clients and you're not trying to figure out what title is or what probate is or all that jazz. So what I'm going to go into is just avoiding some pre-listing pitfalls. This presentation, full disclosure, is very much front-loaded. It is, we're going to talk the most on topic number 1, avoiding client frustrations and delays, and then how to get paid at closing. If you guys have any questions, we can get into that. We'll do the raffle at the next HSPB event because I'm sorry, I couldn't quite be there today to do that. I don't know when that event will be, Greg. I'll leave that up to you and Sean.
Yes, we should have one soon. Should be soon.
Yeah, we need to. We can do a raffle then for the agents who have been at this presentation. The rest don't get to participate. So glad for those who are here.
I like that.
So with questions that you might have at the end, unless it's, if you guys are going to get into something specific to a file that you are working on that, is kind of an off case scenario, if you can connect with me outside of the presentation, I just want to try to kind of be mindful of everyone else's time. But obviously if it's right on point and it's a little bit more general in nature, then we can share it with the group. But I know you guys all have places to be, and also Greg's going to cover a couple things at the end of this. Now, when I went back into the purpose of the presentation, it's really to your benefit. I'm trying to show you these issues to help save you time so that you can go acquire more listings. So it's kind of almost, it's informative, but it's a strategy for when you run into these issues of, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I only need to spend 30 minutes, whereas before you might have been spending a lot more time. The other thing I want to highlight on that theme is that the earlier on in the process that these issues are getting identified, the more time you are going to save when you get to closing. So the goal isn't to have you find out about these issues the week before and then everyone is scrambling and stressing out and spending, instead of 30 minutes, if you had just done it at the beginning, you're now spending 5 hours, a couple of days, you're stressed out. I don't like that feeling. I'm sure you guys feel the same. That's kind of how we try to run our business model. So this isn't stuff that we don't try to do ourselves, because that's, the more upfront you catch this, the better. So a couple of highlighted topics that, because time is money, my favorite quote, by the way. A couple of highlighted topics that we've identified is these 5, which is property and an estate, trust and authorized signers, POA issues, homestead issues, and fraud. I'm really going to kind of stay more in the top 4, not get too much into fraud just for purposes of time. But these are all things you guys can avoid either pre-listing or during the listing appointment itself. These don't have to come up once you're under contract if you're kind of doing a couple proactive measures. And again, the earlier on, which I sound like a broken record, that you catch this, the better experience, not only for you, but also for your client. And they're going to remember if, what the process was like, if you were scrambling at the end, or if this is stuff that you walked into a listing appointment saying, hey, I noticed X, Y, and Z, and I need these items, or I need you to provide me with your attorney's information. So you look a lot more professional as far as the listing, and then throughout the process, everyone kind of looks a little bit better. So with estates, pre-listing, I always recommend, if you're going to meet with a seller or make an offer, look it up on Papa. If you see the abbreviation EST or TR or TSTE, you want to make sure that the current owner isn't deceased. If you see EST, the current owner is deceased, but with TR and TRSTE, you want to make sure that you know whether or not they're deceased. And this is, again, something you guys can take about 30 seconds before you go into the listing appointment and look up Papa for properties in Palm Beach County, or the other property appraiser site if it's in Martin, or if you guys are working out of other counties. This also looks pretty good if you are looking into an estate or confirming who is actually the owner of the property. Because one of my favorite things when I get a contract in is to find out that the person who signed as the seller is actually dead. It's awkward for a lot of reasons. So kind of finding this out up front and identifying if it's in either an estate or that you have the contract actually signed by the right parties is a big thing. Now, if you've done your due diligence, you've gone on Papa, you see, okay, the property's in an estate, that's awesome. You now need to confirm with whoever is the heir, or usually they call it personal representative. So that's going to be the person you're meeting with, which is like the kid or whatever of the person who's passed away. You're going to want to find out who their probate attorney is. Anytime it's in an estate, when there is not a trust, the property has to go through probate. That's all you need to know about that. You don't need to know what probate is. You don't need to know how long it takes. All you need to know is it needs to go through probate, and they need a probate attorney to do that. The reason I say you don't need to know any more than that is one thing I unfortunately see sometimes is agents will start becoming the messenger in between the probate attorney, the client, and the title company. And while the intention is good, if you don't know if you don't relay the information correctly, that can create significant problems for either the probate attorney or the title company. So in all reality, the title company and the probate attorney are the ones who need to be linked up. And then, of course, if the client has questions, they can connect with either the probate attorney or title company. Now, we all have those super needy clients that want you involved in every step. Totally fine. I would recommend a three-way call. So you, the client, and either the title company or the probate attorney. And not only the concern is if information is getting missed, but also the concern is your client's going to have follow-up questions for these parties. Inevitably, they're going to say, how long is it going to take? What else do you need from me? What about my sister, Mary Sue, who's in Pennsylvania, who's not talking to me? How does this impact the closing? So to save yourself time, I just wouldn't play the messenger, because again, either it's going to lead to mistakes or you're going to have to keep following up because your client's going to have more questions. And you're likely not going to know exactly what questions to ask from those parties. So again, once the important thing you guys can do, and that's why it's probably really faint to see, but there's like a little magnifying glass, is like you're just investigating this. All you've had to do at this point is see if it's in an estate. If it is, you get the probate attorney involved and then move on. And you can go back to worrying about Chime and getting more listing appointments.
So this is, not to interrupt you, but Olivia, but this is something not to overlook, because Dee Dee, remember you and I ran into this issue?
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of culprits of this, actually. I'll use us as an example. We got a listing, I think Olivia, you probably remember this, a couple of years ago. I think it was right at like the start of COVID, and it was a beautiful oceanfront condo up at Jupiter Island. And I believe it was in his wife's name, who was deceased, correct? And we were dealing with him. We looked it up on Papa before. but we just kind of never really thought it would be that big of an issue. However, it was solely in his wife's name, who was deceased. Yeah, he told us it was like in his will that, you know, it was willed and gifted down to him, however it was worked out. Anyways, we listed it, spent the money on marketing, videos, all this stuff. And I believe it kind of came up when we had received an offer finally. It was on market for a couple months, and then we finally received an offer. And I believe his kids now came into the picture, and they didn't want to sell the property, of course. And I think Olivia, we were talking about that. Like, this is what needed to be done prior to us even listing the property, which was our fault at the end of the day, because we just kind of believed what the seller told us. But again, you can't always just believe what they're going to tell you. You need to, exactly what Olivia says, is ensure that all your T's are crossed, or T's are crossed and I's are dotted, because just going off what they say doesn't mean anything. And long story short, we ended up not being able to do anything with the deal, and we took the property off the market at the end of the day because his family didn't want to sell. But if that was situated the right way, we wouldn't have ran into this issue. Or if the issue was there and the kids didn't want to sell and it wasn't set up properly, we wouldn't have at least listed the property and gone through our time, money, and expenses of showing the property, spending money on marketing. So this is real stuff that does happen every day, that you guys definitely need to just be wary of.
No, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think, you know, that's a really good point you said, is we relied on what he said. You have people either that are flat out lying to you too, or this is the other thing, you're getting into really complicated legal issues, like with estates, with trusts. People don't understand what has necessarily been set up for, let's say, their parents, as far as their estate goes, or as far as their trust goes. So it's not even necessarily that the kid, you know, who you're dealing with is being dishonest. He just might not know regarding what the trust ramifications are. And, you know, that's why, again, where I say, get the probate attorney, get the title company involved. You guys don't need to be involved unless somebody in there is a probate attorney or trust attorney. I'm neither of those things. And I tell people that up front. I don't know really much. I know a limited amount about the probate process because I don't need to. It's not part of my job. My job is to get to the closing and have clear title. What the probate attorney does is a probate attorney's job. So that's kind of the theme of this, is just identifying that, like Greg said, the time, the cost, like the missed opportunities, because you've, you know, not taken that 5 to 10 minutes up front, can really save a lot of time. And if you have questions, you can always call me or Sean. We can either, one of two things, do a quick look online, or if necessary, maybe pull a title search if it's not something we feel we can answer without something a little bit more involved. Tying into estates, because we love talking about people that are dead or preparing for death. So trusts and authorized signers. Oftentimes you guys will get a kid. I keep using the word kid, but you'll get, you know, the parents have set up a trust and their kid has POA. All right, as soon as you hear trust and POA, stop what you're doing, because 99 times out of 100, the trustee cannot use a POA to sign. So the POA does not work for people signing as trustees of a trust. So if you have a trust in place, which you can find out on PAPA, if the property is held in trust, you'll see the abbreviation TR or TRSTE. Find out if the trustee is signing. If they say, oh, I have a POA for my dad who's trustee, it will not work 99% of the time. At that point, though, you as the agent, guess what? You don't need to know about POAs, trust laws. All you need to do is worry about getting the POA and the trust paperwork, which the title company is going to want to look at anyway. So again, you've now spent, we'll be conservative in our estimates. We're going to say you spent 5 minutes looking up the property on PAPA, and maybe 30 minutes to an hour getting the trust paperwork from your client, whoever you're speaking with, if it's the kid. And now you're done. You don't need to do anything else except send it over to the title company, and we'll look at it and see. We'll review the trust. We have to review the trust. That's part of our closing requirements anyway. So you're not doing anything that won't need to get done down the road. So again, this is why it's so good if you get this pre-listing. Now you, like in Greg's case, you saved the time of not being able to sell, because let's say Mark is the son of Joe, and Mark has POA for Joe, but Joe owns the property in a trust. Mark can't sign for Joe using the POA. The trustee, so it's either Mark, or if Mark is incapacitated, now it's a successor trustee. Or excuse me, if Joe is incapacitated, now it's a successor trustee who has to sign. Mark may not be that successor trustee. It might be the other brother. We'll call him Leon. If Leon doesn't want to sell, you're going to have the same problem that Greg ran into. So again, we're talking about a minimal amount of time where, and also you really don't have to review the trust. You just send it over to the attorney, unless you guys are looking to become trust attorneys. But law school is kind of a pain. So I don't know if I would do that.
Dee Dee has a question for you, Olivia.
Hi, Olivia.
Okay.
Just real quick.
Hi, Dee Dee.
Hi, honey. I've had a really hard time. I've asked at least 3 or 4 customers for the trust, and they say it's not my business and they won't give it to me.
That's fine. They're going to have to give it to the title company. So if they don't want to give it to you, no problem.
Okay, so I should, because they don't want me involved to look at their trust. It is a little personal. So every single time I've asked for it, they say no. So in that case, should I just directly say, well, I think I'll have my title company contact you?
Yeah, the title company, yes, it is private, and I would highlight that with anybody who's asking otherwise, but the title company is going to need to review the trust, especially if they're selling the property. If they're buying it, I don't really care what the trust, says at that point, because if you're lying to me, you're going to have problems when you go to sell. So that's on you as the buyer. But the seller, that onus is on the title company. And unless you have some shady title company or company that's not doing their job, they're gonna need to review the trust.
So try to get you in touch with them before I even do the listing or half the listing and say,
or you've identified that it's needed. I would give them the heads up. Hey, you're going to need to deliver this to the title company. If you don't want to give it to me because you're concerned it has personal financial details, no hard feelings. When do you want me to put you in touch with the title company?
Okay. Yeah, because one time I did the listing.
Leave it up to them.
I did the listing, the photographer, everything, and they wouldn't even give it to the title company when the title company asked. So we got to that point where too much work was done. So next time, I think I'll just get them in touch with you directly first.
Right. And I think that's a good point. Like if they're not going to give it over to the title company, again, no hard feelings. You're not selling your place.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Oh, well, it just tells me that they really don't have a trust or something. That's probably why.
Yeah, something doesn't add up.
Well, and that's a good red flag. I don't really have a trust. Okay, well then how do you own a property in trust? So either, like these are all things though, like if you can identify them at the beginning, you're not doing this once you're under contract. And more importantly, I think what Greg touched on was like, you've put all this marketing and time and, photography and all this work. And now, I don't want to give over my trust. All right. The title company is going to tell you they can't do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality, unfortunately.
Right. I mean, that case was really hard because what happened was that he was like 85, 87. So you kind of respect your elders, especially, and like your grandparents, you have that kind of, you throw that little wrench in there, like, oh, he's got to know what's going on. And come to find, he said, oh no, it was in it's my home, but I trusted it to my wife. And then it goes back to me. then the problem was he didn't have a trust, and I don't even think he had a will. The house was left to the wife, and the wife's will was left to the kids, so that he wasn't even involved in the whole ownership of it. And we didn't even know that till we had an offer, and one of the kids had to sign off, and I guess he had 4 kids, and one of the kids, all 3 were okay with it, but one didn't want to. So we went in, he was an elderly gentleman, so nice. He kind of came into the office a lot. We were almost like friends with him. And he's like, no, there's no problem. My wife died, but it's mine. I gave it to her in the first place. Come to find out, he never had a will. It was left to the
Yeah,
kids.
I mean, anytime somebody's not gonna give you paperwork, I mean, it's nice to be friendly, and you guys kind of are in a different role than we're in with title, where we can't be, we can be a little bit more, we have compliance that we have to follow, so there's not much wiggle room. But if there's a major red flag to me, if somebody's not going to furnish a trust document and says everything is going to be fine, like, well, just show me it's fine.
Yeah.
You have, when you set up a trust, you expend money for trust attorneys to prepare something because you don't want your heirs to deal with it down the road. So you're already a planner. So, and I think they have to kind of understand at that point, they would have a more elevated sense of the process after they pass. They've planned for this. So if they're not willing to provide that, that's a red flag. I'd keep that in the back of your mind, regardless of how nice they are. And again, they might not understand what's going on or what their spouse agreed to.
That's what it was. Actually, he was really not, he really did not know what was going on. And I think in his, last 10, 20 years since his wife died, it was a long time ago, he never did anything about it. So I honestly think in this case, he had no idea.
Okay, yeah, but the point is, doesn't matter how nice these people are. Not saying you can't trust people, but at the end of the day, you have to get the right documents and ensure, because otherwise you're wasting everybody's time, and so you always just got to kind of be weary of that.
Ask for more.
Same with POAs. By the way, this is like my kind of segues into my next topic. If you have somebody that's signing for their parents, using a POA. So we know, I've covered this, if you hear trust and POA, bad. But, if you've got a kid who's signing for their dad because, dad's unfortunately got dementia, that's fine to use a POA as long as the property's not owned in a trust. But the kid, we got to get a copy of that power of attorney from the kid right away. Oftentimes, power of attorneys are executed in other states, which is fine as long as they're executed in the formality of how it needs to be signed off in Florida. And POAs for Florida, in order to be used to transfer property, have to be signed before a notary and 2 witnesses. Good news is you don't ever have to remember that. You just have to send the POA to the title company. Red flag too, kind of like going back to Dee Dee's point, if they're not willing to turn over the POA, which we just ran into with a closing, that's a red flag. And we did not take on a recent closing. It was about a $2 million contract for that reason, because we thought that the POA was fraudulent. So, if people aren't willing to give over these documents, hopefully there's a reason why, and you kind of need to find that out. Really depressing topics we're getting into: death, dad with dementia, homestead. I just want to bring up homestead, because this really is homestead, really should be titled homestead/divorce, which is just kind of in theme with my positive topics for the day. Homestead. So Sean, my lovely husband, before we got married, he bought a house. And he bought it in his name only. Guess what? Once we got married, he can't sell that house without me. We thought Sean was smart until now. The spouse needs to be involved in that process if the property is homestead. Good news, it's a 5-second search on Papa. You can see if the property is homesteaded or not. It'll list it right there, homestead, and it'll also show an exemption for $50,000. So when you go into a listing, after you've looked on Papa with Frank, if whoever your client's name is, we'll call him Frank. Frank goes in, we're excited to meet him. Frank's got his lovely new wife, Marie. Guess what? Marie doesn't have to sign the contract, but she's going to have to sign off on the deed. And I have had that at closings where we have a spouse that the story is always the spouse didn't give anything to the closing. Well, she never paid anything. Guess what? I don't care. I feel bad, and that sucks, but your spouse has to be involved on whatever terms, whether you're living together, whether you're separated, by the way. Until you are legally divorced, that spouse for homesteaded property in Florida better be participating in the process, because that spouse is going to need to sign off on the deed.
Question.
And I've had that.
Sorry, Olivia, it's Barbie. Question, if we're not aware, if we haven't done our homework, whatever, but we go in for the listing appointment and we get the contract and the couple is sitting there, the contract is not negated if both people sign off. Obviously, they've got to sign off on the deed, but does it matter whether or not their signature is on the contract?
Good question. No. So if the property is owned by Frank in Frank's name only, and it happens to be homestead, technically Frank is the only one who needs to sign off on the contract. If you want to slap in Marie as well, it won't hurt anything. It's not required. She doesn't need to be on the contract. But you want that spouse to be in play, and that you know it's not going to be an issue to sign off on the deed, because you don't want to get to closing, which I've had the experience of where a couple of times actually with a spouse, and we weren't really notified that it was going to be a problem until we got to closer to closing. So just something to keep in mind. You just want them, you know, what's the temperament? Because you guys are going to know the ins and outs. If you start to hear red flags, like Frank is like, Maria is sucking me dry, she's going crazy, like all these things need to be, you know, they're probably not going to go away. So they just keep those as red flags in your mind. Last thing, and we've kind of done a presentation on vacant lot stuff, but with fraud, I just want to make sure, kind of like Dee Dee, where, you know, if somebody seems nice and then you're asking for some follow-up stuff like driver's licenses, and they start saying everything's going to be fine, I'd question that a little, like, you know, based on what, all that kind of stuff. You just want to make sure that who you're dealing with is in fact the person who's signing the contract. So getting things like an ID, all that stuff are just kind of so critical. And again, this isn't to make you become a title expert or to turn away business. It's just to kind of identify stuff right away that can help you down the process. Do we have any questions, things I can answer? No. All right.
I think we're good here.
Okay. Oh, Amber. Hi, Amber. I don't know.
Hi.
She messaged. She asked for it. Hi. I have a couple good recommendations for wills and trust attorneys. It depends on the complexity of the trust. So some people have less assets and less family dynamics that need to be dealt with. So I have kind of what I would consider somebody who's a little bit where it's simpler, it's not as complex. I have a little bit more elevated trust attorneys that handle things where there's more assets involved, and then also potentially more family dynamics at play, kind of just to price it out accordingly so that people aren't wasting money on something that they don't necessarily need.
Yeah. Well, and I think the purpose for me asking that question too, I feel as if a lot of people like put this conversation in front of mine when they're closing, and they're like, oh, like, well, I have kids and maybe I want to put this in a trust. And then that like stimulates conversation that the agent could then like provide a resource to them to potentially prepare the house going into a trust, you know, in the future, depending on what's appropriate. So if like knowing those contacts would be super helpful for those kind of in that mindset.
So Barbie also has is a good resource because she just said her husband deals with a lot of trusts and estates because he does tax work. So I think Barbie, I'll defer to you. And then I always think too, it's somebody that you want to interview and investigate, like who, because not somebody that I might not necessarily be a good fit for somebody else. So I have a couple, but I always encourage them to meet with the attorney. Usually they do an initial free consultation and you can kind of get a feel for somebody that you like. On that note, Amber, which I like that you're bringing this up, for clients that say, my property, I have a will, it's fine. Wills have to go through probate. So that is a public process. It goes through court. It's a lot more lengthy to deal with. I am a huge advocate of setting everything up in a trust. Sean and I you don't have to be rich to do it. I mean, Sean and I are in the process of putting like our house in a trust. We live in a townhome, like it's nothing glamorous, but setting up stuff in a trust helps out any heirs or beneficiaries down the road. So basically what you're doing for your client's sake is if they start talking about, oh, it's my property, I have a will. Basically a will means that your kids are going to have to deal with it down the road instead of you pre-planning for them. And you are paying some costs up front for the trust attorney, but usually when you have an attorney prepare a will, you're also paying. So I'm a huge advocate of get it with a trust attorney. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You don't have to have a certain amount of assets, but now you have peace of mind. Like, I know how my assets are going to be distributed. It's not going to go through court and a judge isn't going to ultimately decide on that. That's a topic we can get into in further detail, but I'm just a huge believer in getting it done through a trust.
So Olivia and Barbie, is there any way, once I post this on the home sales family page, is there any way both you guys could respond with like Olivia with those couple of contacts you may have, and then Barbie with Mike's contact as well for any agents that may not have it?
Absolutely. Yeah, Mike deals a lot and has for many years, deals with properties, estates and trusts. He's, just so you know, Amber, he is a CPA. And we own Leonard and Leonard CPAs. So he handles a lot of large estates, trusts, and because of that, he's got the attorneys that are referring him the business that he deals with. And the attorneys are here locally. So if you have any questions or want to speak with him, you just set up a call with Mike and let him know what it is you're dealing with, and he will be able to refer you, hopefully, to one of his attorneys that he works with and knows well.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have some of his cards here at the office, and then Barbie, if you can throw his contact in the once I post this up on the family page later.
Yeah, I'll put in his name and his office number, and his office number rolls to his cell phone in case he's not in the office. So, but we're here locally in Jupiter.
Cool, cool. Thank you, guys.
Amber, for the good question. All right, so last thing, I'm gonna X out of this. Okay, so I've kind of front loaded this with stuff that can be identified pre-listing or during the listing appointment purposely, because again, all that 5 minutes of time can just save you a bunch of time. I did, the whole point of this presentation is like roadmap to successful closing. So I did kind of want to just get into a couple things. Once you are under contract, which I see can create, kind of trying to save you time by identifying them as early on in the process. One of the biggest things that we see on our side is expectation setting. You know, and I just ran into this with an agent last week who was super frustrated that the loan was closing on the 8th, which was Monday, which was when the contract had it extended through. But unfortunately, the lender kept relaying that it was closing earlier than that. So I'm a huge fan of, you know, our office will always try to be on the point of, we're going to do our best to do by a certain day, but we're not 100% sure. And I think there's always some sense in that with your clients is, you know, I'm going to do my best. But if you're committing to a date, be ready to execute and have it close or have certain deadlines met by that date. Because if you don't, you're again going to be super stressed out for no reason other than you could have just said, hey, we're going to do our best, and if we can close it sooner, we will. But I'm not sure, because there are so many other parties involved to the transaction. So I love when, like, we'll get, you know, we'll have a closing date moved up, and again, we'll always do our best, but you know, we got to also check with the seller, the lender, the buyer, also the title company. You know, are we ready to close, or are there certain outstanding issues? So that's stuff just to keep in mind during closing. I think the other thing, as far as something we see on our end that tends to create a lot of issues to closing is permit closeouts. How many people like permits? I hate them. It's also, by the way, it's not a titling issue. Right now, it's usually a contractual issue because everyone's putting that additional language into the contract about closing out permits. Mm-hmm. So as soon as we get the lien search report, we'll let you know. Our office is very transparent. Hey, we've got an open permit, or there's an expired permit. P.S. Your client may just have bought the property 3 years ago, and there's an expired permit from 2000. That does happen. They did not really start doing permit searches as part of the lien search process until 2008. Guess what? For your client, it doesn't matter. You've got an open permit or an expired permit by that point. They've got to deal with it. But one thing we do see a lot of is where it's not a titling issue, so we can close, but we're waiting till the last minute for the agents either to schedule the appointment or just work out an arrangement with the other agent to do an escrow holdback. If you do that a week before closing, everything's a lot more seamless. We're not all scrambling the day of closing like, oh, we thought the inspection was going to be yesterday and they were going to have it closed out, and today's the closing, and now we got to have the client sign another document, and now I've got to get with the other agent and agree to an amount that we hold back in escrow. And, you know, kind of identifying those things a little earlier on in the process of like, we might not get the inspection scheduled, or even if we do, will they close it out? Maybe let's just do a holdback. Will save you guys, I think, a lot of time and stress the day of closing. And obviously, if it gets closed out and we don't need to do the holdback, no problem. But just those kind of things where I think in my mind, when I want to go into a closing, I want everything to be kind of calm. It shouldn't be, all the clients should be doing the closing on closing day is signing and maybe wiring in funds. We shouldn't have to be worrying about any other issues.
So Olivia, as
last 2 points.
Sorry, just real quick on the permits. Like you said, we're seeing that a lot on every contract, and Amber and her amazing team at White Picket Fence Transact Coordinators will say the same thing. Now, I know this is, every side of the fence is different, right? If I'm representing the seller and I receive an offering that has all the permit lingo on the additional terms, or additional comments, excuse me, you know, what's your thoughts on just leaving them? Or I know as agents, it's hard for us to say, hey, there's an open permit. Hey, Mr. Seller, do you have any open permits? Hey, no, there's no open permits, but at the end of the day, we know how that works. What's your thoughts on that lingo that's kind of coming on the contract? Should we be trying to mark that off as the listing agent, but as the buyer's agent, put that in there? Or, I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Okay, I'm always cynical. So if I see somebody crossing out language about an open permit, I'm already worried that they're open permits.
Mhm.
So I would leave it in. That would be my take. Hey, we got to get it addressed. And if you're crossing it out, to me, on the other side, it's like, what do I need to be worried about?
Yeah.
But I think when you go into your listing appointment or when you get that offer back, not the listing appointment, excuse me, when you get that offer back, it's a conversation I would say to your client, and it's even something you can preempt them at the listing appointment is, you know, 99% of the contracts we're seeing right now address this open expired permit language. Are you aware of any permits? And by the way, just so you know, if something does come up, which might not be from when you owned the property, you're still going to be responsible. So that kind of goes back to setting where communication is key and setting those expectations, because now when the title company calls, oh yeah, Greg told me that this might happen. So, you know, I don't think crossing out that language, to me, if I saw that on the buy side, if you guys saw that on the buy side, you'd probably be concerned. I think really ultimately we want to get the permits closed out. It's just preparing the client during that listing appointment, ideally is, hey, this might come up. And then everyone's, you know, again, you've already had that conversation.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
or
Didi has
if
a quick
there's a
question for you.
problem, like, okay.
So,
Oh, Olivia, just a quick question. So I'm not so sure of the title's time frame for checking those permits or what have you, but what would happen in a contract, executed contract, if the contingencies were already lifted? Is there any way for them to get out of it?
For permits, so permits aren't really a title issue. The issue where they come up now is the additional terms of the contract where it's requiring that the seller close them out. We can close a file with open or expired permits without, as long as that additional language is in there. All we simply do is disclose the existence of those permits, and the onus at that point becomes really on the buyer to get them closed out.
Yeah, but
It doesn't stop us from closing it because it's not a title issue, so it wouldn't be tied to those contingencies.
so if it's in the contract on the additional comments, but say they pass their inspection period in their finance contingency period, and then the day after finance contingency period, there's an open permit and the seller says, I'm not closing that permit, is that that would be essentially the seller not performing on the contract, correct? That would.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because that additional term is going to extend past the contingency period.
And if there's no language in the
Because-
contract stating they will close the permit, then it's on the buyer.
It doesn't matter if it's on the buyer. Yeah, because it's not a titling issue at that point.
Okay, because they can accept the property with an open permit.
right.
Correct. Yeah, we have to disclose it, but yeah, it's not preventing us from closing.
Okay. Okay.
Good. Thank you, Didi, for your question, because it's
Okay.
tying into my next one about contingency dates. Amber can probably chime in with me on this, because I'm sure her team, who does more closings than we do a month, is a good resource for what not to do. Addendums to contracts. I really highly encourage agents to use the one that has all the different contingencies available if you are extending the closing date.
This is exactly what I was gonna actually discuss after this meeting, because that was like the biggest thing we see.
They don't put it in the
Okay,
I love this.
yeah, extending the closing date does not extend the contingency period. Period. Let me repeat that. Extending the closing date does not extend the contingency period. Period.
Also, extending the inspection period, if there's a secondary deposit, this is one of my pet peeves as a TC, is people like do that secondary deposit following the inspection period, but then they don't extend both. And the buyer's stuck doing the secondary deposit, even though they're still negotiating. That's one of my little pet peeves.
Mhm.
They wouldn't have to put the deposit in if they could extend it.
Yeah, that's a great point,
Yeah.
Amber, and that's why, like, it's pivotal, of course, when an agent's using Amber, of course, as a TC, we never run into these issues, but I will say we had this, and this is something I was gonna go over after, so, but we'll see addendums, just blank addendums, you know, a addendum to contract that'll say buyer and seller agree to extend the closing to, you know, from 5/10 to 5/15. You're like, okay, well, why you guys extend the closing? Oh, we haven't received our approval yet, our financing approval. And you're like, well, you didn't extend the financing approval, you just extended the closing, which does you essentially, you know, there's 100% of the process there, and you just did 50% of it. So that doesn't do you any good. So that's a great point to Amber and to Olivia's. That's something we're seeing a lot.
Yeah, it not only, it doesn't do you any good, but you've now created a significant amount of stress for yourself for no reason.
Mhm.
So if you don't extend the necessary contingency periods, so Amber mentioned the inspection, my topic here is on loan contingencies. You've now put your client's escrow deposit in jeopardy.
Mhm.
I don't want to have that conversation where I've just potentially cost the client 15, 20,000.
Mhm.
I can't imagine anyone wants to have that conversation. So, you know, by the way, Amber's team will follow up on those loan contingencies. I don't on the title side. So I'm not a backup in that regard for the loan contingencies if we're doing title work on the buyer's side. I'm not following up with the lender to make sure that the buyer got approval.
Mhm.
Amber's team will do that, but if you're hoping I'm going to catch that,
Mhm.
I'm going to have a hard conversation.
Yep.
So
No, I mean, that's a great
warned.
point.
It's not something that impacts title. It kind of goes, I don't want to sound lazy, but you know, we've got to focus on getting to closing, and you know, there's certain parts that fall on other people's responsibilities. So if you're not comfortable with that loan contingency period, I'd encourage everyone to have Amber's office, because I know they do follow up on that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Don't be upset that I don't. I've said it on video. Last thing I just want to talk about, which we see delays closing, I'm sure Amber can chime in on this, HOA approvals.
Yep.
Oh my God, horrible. Okay, there's not much you can do on this except for getting the approval, the application in early. I know when our office does a welcome call, Chloe from our team is really vigilant as far as communicating with both the selling agent and the buyer, the importance of applying right away. In addition to applying right away, I would recommend also following up with the association to make sure about a week later that they have everything that they need. Because a lot of times the association won't email, or they'll send it to the wrong email and they'll say that they've communicated that they're missing something when they haven't. So follow up. I'm not a huge fan of associations. Most of them don't know that, because I try to be as nice as possible on the phone. We can't close without an approval if it's in an association or condo. that requires approval, it's not something I can work around. We have to have that approval. So we do need to be nice and cooperate with them as much as possible. And
has one
I think
question for you.
yeah.
Olivia, just to, yeah, that is all good information. What I was coming across, I'm doing a lot of admin work, is a lot of stressful calls from realtors about their closing date, not getting approval and this and that. But what I don't think a lot of them know is that buyer can get it expedited, and most, so instead of being all stressed, I believe the buyer can pay more at most associations to get it expedited, and a lot of agents don't know this.
That's a great point. Yeah, and I think that goes to the, as agents, just doing a quick follow-up and checking, not only did you get, like you said, did you get the application? Do you need anything else? And can we pay extra to expedite?
But
Sometimes
even
you can even
better
pay
is
after.
if you're working with, if you're passing the file off to Amber, her and her team are going to do that for you, which is the absolute best part of this, because a lot of agents don't understand that there's a lot of work that goes in, especially if you're in an HOA like that, where her team's following up, and they're the ones making sure. Because I mean, I'll be completely blunt, I've forgotten a couple HOA approvals because you get the contract executed, you're doing other things, you're setting up, inspection periods. And not only that, but that's not your only client. You're dealing with 3, 4, 5, 7 other clients at a time. So things do get forgotten like that. And that's kind of why, she does exactly what she does, because those little things are the things that could kill you, right? You don't really think like an HOA approval is that big of a deal, but the more and more deals we do, the more and more I see how long these HOA approvals do take. A lot of them just don't care. You're just another notch on their belt, essentially, right? So, and ensuring that HOA approval or that HOA application, usually it's within 5 days of the executed contract, is made to the association. That's what her team's going to do. I've had probably honestly 3 or 4 of my buyers in the past years that I've taken a week to get their HOA application submitted, just because it was 100% my fault and forgetting, you're busy running around. So just keep that in mind. That's what these guys at White Picket Fence are doing, because you should be out there, and I'll say this till I'm blue in the face, but you guys need to be out there working other deals, other clients, and ensuring that client you're working with is happy and doing what you're supposed to be doing for that client. I know Olivia will probably hate me saying this, but you guys really you need to know the contract, but in other breaths, your job as an agent is to be doing other things as well, which is creating more business and creating, ensuring the current business you have is up to par. So this is stuff that, I can't, kind of say enough, that having somebody like that to take those weight off your shoulders is huge and extremely professional too. It makes you guys look a lot more professional when you have, one of her TCs out there with an email signature saying that they're a transaction coordinator for you guys and all branded towards you. It's nothing but incredible feedback on our part too. So just keep that in mind as well. Once you start, like I said, it doesn't have to just be if you're doing one deal, it doesn't have to just be that. It's once you guys really start rolling as well, it helps on every, helps on your first deal, and helps on if you're doing 10 deals a month, So just keep that in mind, because these little items that you can't forget can be forgotten pretty easily. So.
Yeah. Well, and what is the best use of one's time, right? The best use of a productive agent's time is not calling HOAs between the designated hours in which they're open, because it's 55 and over and everyone's retired and they're only there 2 hours a day. But one thing I want to add to the HOA conversation, in the event that you're not using a TC, no judgment whatsoever, is you really have to make that call, because you also come into scenarios where they only meet on the 3rd Wednesday when the wind blows a certain way. And next thing you know, your closing date is after that meeting and nobody's had a conversation with the HOA. And then you literally have no control over it, or you're fighting tooth and nail to beg the president to come in to sign that off on this, approval. It's really strenuous. So in the event that you're not using a TC, like Olivia said, you have got to call the management company. It's annoying. They're not nice. they have a crappy job. TCs don't love doing it, but we have a job as well. We got to get it done. So I would just say, like, if nothing else, do not avoid that phone call, because it could be as simple as getting a copy of the contract. But like Olivia said, well, we never heard from anyone, so we can't approve them. And you're like, what? Like, you could have just called me and I could have sent you the contract, you know? So just do not avoid verifying that the application is in. You will regret it.
Yep. Dee
Just wanted to add about the
Um,
TC real quick for the agents too. One of the most valuable things I see in the TC also is the timeline dates, which it can be really a hassle when you're working with an uncooperative other agent, because they'll say, oh, no, your inspection ends this period, or, you know, the closing date, your contingencies are up this, and you're like, no, they're up this, and you're just at a standstill, you know, and there's really nothing clear. So I think like that timeline that they send you with, and everybody's on board, they send it to everyone, the list agent, the selling agent. So there is no questions about any of the dates, which really relieves a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think where I'm going to take this next. I don't think I have too much else except the expectation setting. Again, that just kind of goes back to you guys with, and also too, if we want to tie in the HOA to this, the HOA approval, we always tell everyone it's 30 days for the approval. So if you have a contract with an association that's within less time than that, we're going to kind of give you that heads up front. And I think I'll leave you with kind of just identifying those, well, one, saying thank you, because I'm always grateful to be part of these meetings, but is kind of identifying these pieces and putting the right parties in touch. You know, kind of the crux of my conversation at the beginning was putting, you know, the probate attorney in touch with the title company and, you know, getting those items that you need. I really feel that, you know, you kind of as agents do make a decision as far as what your time is. Kind of part of a lot of this presentation, or at least I've tried to convey, is how important your time is, because you're trying to maximize it by identifying small things for a little bit of time. And then at the end of the process, you're not scrambling and having a lot more time. Apart from putting those parties involved, I think you guys also as agents want to make sure that you're working with the right people in the transaction and for your business. So having somebody make a call for, you know, I'm surprised when agents ever, you know, Amber's team where they don't charge anything unless it closes is huge to me for any agent, whether you're planning to grow your business or not, because, you know, you're paying for them only through the closing, and the amount of not only time that you're aligning yourself with, but also her team. Amber, how many transactions on average do your TCs do a month?
Individually, it ranges from about 30 closings to 50 a month. And we have
Okay,
60.
so they're even seeing more contracts than I am a month, and they're seeing bad scenarios unwind where they can also look over a contract with you, you know, and see potentially, you know, things that they might want to make, you know, they have thoughts on, because they've seen that those scenarios just at a greater magnitude. It's not that anyone's smarter. I'm not smarter than any of you all. It's just simply, I see 30 to 45 files a month. So we just have more, I don't want to say bad experiences, but more obstacles where we have, and once they've been resolved, we can utilize that experience on future contracts for how to better advise agents.
Well,
and I think that's a huge asset for an agent to not only either have a title company, but also a transaction coordinator on board with that breadth of experiences available. So that's my thoughts.
That's an amazing point, Olivia, because that's what I was just going to say. Essentially, it's just utilizing them is essentially another training tool as well, because they see stuff that we're not seeing as the brokerage, potentially that you guys aren't seeing, potentially that the lender's not seeing. So for you guys as agents, it's easy for you guys to be able to also reach out to Amber, reach out to your TC, whatever the case may be, and ask a question on that contract or that addendum, whatever it may be. And it's just another tool for you guys to utilize for training as well. So that's a great point.
Yeah, I was actually talking with Amber's TC Brooke about my favorite rider B to the contract yesterday. So it is true stuff. It does happen. And it was actually, I think, one of Josh's deals. So, but yeah. All right. Do you guys have any questions? Anything I can help with? Because I'm going to have to hop off this call.
I think everybody's good. Everybody's good here. Yeah. No, we appreciate you, Olivia. Thank you. And if you guys have questions for Olivia, reach out. And Olivia, if you just don't mind, once I post this up, just throw some of those estate, if you have some state attorneys or trust attorneys, anything like that, just let us know if you can throw them in the chat as well. That way some of the agents can have that.
Yeah, no problem. And then as agents, if you guys have any topics that you kind of want covered, I think this was just helpful from a time perspective, but that you're feeling would benefit your business, just let me know. Try to put something together.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you and
Thank you,
Shawno
Olivia.
and everything you guys do.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. We appreciate you guys. We definitely do. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. So real quick, we'll just take just a few minutes. Kind of go over one of the things we kind of went over already was the extension addendum, and Amber can probably relate to this a little bit, but this is the one that's needed. It's an actual extension addendum to the contract, and it's hard to see here. But you can actually see it's got terms, and sorry about the address, whoever's property that is, but they did it right, so it's okay. But you can see here, you're actually extending the closing date itself, and then right under that, the finance contingency period as well. So that's kind of your money shot right there. That's what is needed. And I can't tell you how many times we just see addendum to contract, a blank paragraph that says we're extending the closing date, just like we were talking about. I won't harp on it too much because we kind of went over that with Amber and Olivia already, thankfully. And there's other items in there. This is, of course, right in app files. Your TC will have it. You guys will have it. Everybody has access to it. So there's no excuses. But everything's right there it's in-house forms under app files. It's there. So absolutely, if you guys are doing an extension, that is the absolute one you need to be doing, not your blank addendum to contracts. Kind of covered that. If Amber has anything, obviously, Amber, you can, just jump on in, but I think that one's pretty squared away. Everybody should be good on that. Another thing is, let me see here. This one's kind of okay, so just tell everybody.
Oh, no. So basically, a lot of realtors, when you're doing a referral agreement, they'll only want to give you 20%. So we usually do 25 is the standard, but they always try to do 20. So when you're sending over the referral agreement, which looks like this, and you're going to really want to put like the third one down is 25% of the full commission received by any real estate transaction involving prospect. So try for the 25.
And to kind of go off of that to parlay into that, you have the referral agreement. And then a lot of agents will ask, okay, I'm doing a deal off market. How am I going to get paid for that? Right? Very simple commission agreement. This is just a blank one, but you can see here, everything is marked. It's pretty, if you guys just review it, take 5 minutes just to kind of review it. Pretty self-explanatory, but it's just commission agreement. So if you're working a deal with a listing, for instance, that's not going on market, yeah, anything of that nature, that is going to be your document. It's just a straight up commission agreement. It's going to be seller, the broker, which remember, this is for commission agreements, buyer broker agreement, and also listing agreements. Where it says broker is always going to be Home Sales Palm Beach. It's not going to be the agent's name. Occasionally, we'll run across where the agent puts their name. Always going to be the brokers. It says broker, so just put Home Sales Palm Beach, Home Sales Treasure Coast. Again, on that commission agreement, as you can see, just one more time, it's pretty simple. Your meat and potatoes, obviously your seller, landlord, and then you have us, property address, and then of course here's the meat and potatoes where it's what's your percentage? What are you gonna get paid for that property? If you guys have questions, reach out to myself, Amber, anybody on her team, whoever your TC is, we can always answer those for you. It's pretty self-explanatory. That is for a seller, yes, like Didi said. There's also one for a buyer, which is a buyer's brokerage agreement, which I don't think are being used enough in today's market. But that is just simply this one right here, buyer's brokerage agreement. On app files, everything's very easy to find. There's a search bar. You guys just go in and start typing. It doesn't even have to say exactly, but everything should be in in-house forms. This is going to be if you're working with a buyer and you essentially, I don't want to use the word tie down that buyer, but it's getting the buyer to work with you. That is what the buyer is going to be doing with you, the term that they're going to work with you on, and the property. So for example, if you have an off-market listing, you're going to get a commission agreement signed. And then you can also work with the buyer's brokerage agreement document. It's again, if you just read it, this one is I believe a 3-page. Very simple. If you just take 2 minutes just to read the actual document, and it's clear as day. What properties you're working with, what term. Doesn't have to be a specific property. It could be just a price range of properties, location, stuff of that nature. So those are the two for kind of, if you're thinking off market, you're going to be, or be on market, obviously with the buyer's brokerage agreement, but commission agreement is going to be for the listing side. One thing I've been seeing a lot too, that we've been having to explain to agents how to explain to sellers. It's rightfully so too. I actually just ran into this problem yesterday on which I don't know, Didi, if this is what you were actually talking about, but what I'm seeing, the listing agreement is going to show a percentage of commission. So section 8A of the listing agreement itself, you can see 5% there. That is showing you the total commission for the purchase price. I have these calls a lot, and it's kind of rightfully so from the sellers if they're not very savvy on reading the documents or anything of that nature. A lot of people will see that, and then right under that on section 9, line 133 is also showing them what percentage you're going to co-op broke with, right? So whoever the selling agent is, your buyer's agent, that's showing what you're going to pay them. Okay. Now, the question I get from sellers a lot is, hey, I see 5% of the total purchase price, but also 2.5%. Am I paying 7.5%? Obviously, you guys know the answer is no. Just kind of explain to them that section 8A is stating 5% of the total purchase price. So obviously section 9 is just what you are paying the selling agent, the selling brokerage. So if you were 6% and you have 2%, you're obviously taking 4%. You guys know that as agents, it's just kind of a question I've been getting from sellers and a couple agents. And Amber, great point. Actually, let me just show you this again. On the total purchase price, you can see, so section 8A says 5% of total purchase price plus XXX. That is where you would input the $295 transaction fee. So no, I would absolutely, because that's where you're kind of disclosing. We have the brokerage disclosure, but let's be honest, people don't read it. People are more liable to read this listing agreement. So that's where you're going to put $295 transaction fee. So that's a great point.
I have a couple things to say.
Yep.
So the XXX you're not supposed to use. This is an actual contract from one of our agents. And the reason you don't use XX or X or XX is because it's Roman numerals for 10, 20, or 30. And they don't want you to put that. They would rather you put NA, not applicable. So all through this contract is XX, XXX, XX. So whatever, you can always leave it blank, because if the other person fills it in, you get the contract back, you know it's not going to match up. So I usually leave it blank instead of putting in a lot. A lot of agents put NA, but you are never going to put XX like they did in through this. And also, so just for future, just put NA. So I wanted to go over this withhold all offers right there. Can you see where it says withhold, where they check that? It says withhold all offers.
I can't see where I'm at.
Seller.
I don't want to show the address.
One seller accepts a contract. So what that means is you can't accept backups. So I would never cross that box off.
Yeah, those two, withhold verbal offers, withhold all offers when seller accepts a sales contract for the property, so.
It just means you
It
can't
just
take,
means you can't, yeah.
wait, one more thing too. So anyways. And also this, at 74, Greg,
Mhm.
where it says if you can show them that, you're not supposed to check anything off because we're not a virtual office.
Okay.
Right there, it says virtual
So
office.
VOW.
Yeah, now they've
Yeah.
checked it off, but that doesn't have anything. That actually means you can't put the address or anything on the MLS, so don't check anything like that. The other thing, one other thing I just wanted to go over, these are kind of important things that you can't change once they're done. So, on line 122, if you hold that up, Greg, it will say, for the, termination protection period, you always want to do like, I usually do 90 days, but don't ever leave it blank, because that would mean that if the customers came to say an open house, and the seller's listing expired, that means they can just sell it to whoever they want. But if you put a protection period, they still have to go through you within the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So it's very, very important to put in something in that date.
Yeah.
And some people put 120 days.
Mhm.
I put 90, some people put 60, whatever you want to do. So the other thing too, I just wanted to say that cancellation fee looks like $40 right there, because it's XXXX. So you never want to do that. That's for the cancellation fee. The other thing too, just really quickly, when you put in $1 for a broker as no brokerage, it's not a very good way to do business, because it's a slam. Basically, you're giving somebody $1. So there's no need to put anything in there, just, just an ethic thing.
So the problem is on MLS, you have to, when you're inputting a listing on the no brokerage side, you have to input a
Right.
number. So that's why you usually see like
do
0.01. Amber could probably, because they do listing inputs as well. So she can probably kind of clarify that a little bit more. I don't know if they changed that, or they were talking about it, but I know last time I input one, you had to put it some sort of numeric value in there, and that's why you usually see 0.01%. So just keep that in mind. Other than that, preferred vendor list we have, that's going to be re-uploaded. Oh, it is uploaded already. Okay, cool. So new preferred vendor list, very similar. Obviously, we have Sean and Olivia's titles, title work. Lender obviously is now Jennifer with Cross Country. Moving companies, homeowners insurance, home inspectors, appraisers, surveyors, obviously white picket fence, transaction coordinating. So everybody's updated on that preferred vendor list. So that is going to be under app files and in-house forms as well. And let me see, is there anything else?
Can I add one more thing, only
Of
because
course.
it kind of bit me in the butt on a transaction, is where you have, and I can't remember because I don't have it in front of me, on the listing agreement where it says what's being paid and by whom. So HOA $295 a month, a homeowner's warranty, things like that. On the other line is to put the transaction brokerage fee, because that property I sold in Jupiter Farms, she was using that as leverage, saying it wasn't on the listing, even though she did have a copy of the brokerage agreement stating that.
So
It was
you're,
supposed to be
Barbara, you're
paid.
saying on the listing agreement itself?
On the contract, I'm sorry.
Oh, on the contract. Yes, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Because
So,
remember
yes.
that,
Yeah, so,
that's, I will never forget that.
yeah, so that's been something like, again, like on the listing agreement, like Amber said, I personally used to never put it in there because we had the disclosure for that. We're putting them in there now, so do that like we were talking about. And on, of course, you have the brokerage disclosure, which states the fee, but listen, I know people don't read that. They sign it. It's usually with an offer. It's usually with the listing agreement, whatever the case may be. It kind of gets lost in the, in the shuffle, if you will. Thank you so much, Amber, for joining us. We appreciate you. So another good spot to put it is in the contract, because we did have that issue, like Barbie was saying, where, yeah, she received it. She's not a well, she's known to kind of not be great at her job anyways. But with that being said, just to cover your butt, always put in the contract as well, because you guys remember, you will send that brokerage disclosure to the title company. It doesn't matter who it is, what title company you're working with. You want to send that, because that's telling the title company that the buyer agreed to pay that $295 transaction fee.
Yeah,
If
and
you're
it
not included,
wasn't
they will not.
us
Yeah.
that screwed it up. It was them.
Yeah, because normally, like, out of 200 transactions a year, this is the first time we've had this issue where somebody blamed it on us not putting in the contract. So it's just one more thing that we see, like, one time out of 200 times, it won't be an issue, but it could become an issue. So anything we can do to kind of cover our butts, your butts, anything better like that. So to Barbie's point, is putting them in the contract now is a great thing. If you're working with producers and you forget to put it in, not a big deal. They understand. But in this case, we were working with somebody that was out of office, and this is kind of what happened. So anywhere you put that, the listing agreement, the contract, and also your brokerage disclosure. So anytime you can add those in there is great. Disclosing as much as possible is never a bad thing. Well, it could be in some cases, but never a bad thing to disclose as much as possible, because it's better for you guys. It's better for the clients at the end of the day.
Should be following the first.
So, yeah, I mean, we had a disbursement with it on there. There was a disclosure, all that stuff. So again, that was kind of a weird setup, but definitely if you have it in the contract, absolutely. And I've had a couple title companies that we've worked with that they still paid it, but they did kind of notate that to us as, oh, we didn't see it in the contract, but I see it on the disclosure. So if we can throw it in the contract now, it doesn't hurt at all. So that's a great point. Anybody have anything?
It's on the contract, they have to pay you.
Yeah, anything on the contract, obviously the contract, and I know Olivia and I have talked about this, like I've talked about addendum to contracts, like your blank addendum. And I'm like, well, it was on the addendum, the contract, and obviously the contract supersedes anything. So, and that's including addendums. So, they're not big addendum fans. And the more and more I do addendums, the less I become, fans of them. And again, it's one of those things, 9 times out of 10, they're fine. There's no issues. It's that one time. So anything on the contract like that is out the door. You have to absolutely abide by the contract. So definitely a good point to bring that up, Barbie. So, but as for us, I think we're pretty much squared away. Barbie, again, if you can put, when we post this, throw Mike's contact at the bottom in a comment, and then we'll go from there. You guys need anything at all, to reach out to myself, Dee Dee. Let us know what you need, and we'll take care of you guys. So as of now, that's all I got, and we'll go from there. We'll get this posted up in the next hour or so. So thank you guys.
Thanks.
See
Greg.
ya.
Thanks, Greg.